Cloud. Yeah, don't trust the cloud. So Ruby Frankie, my God.
Okay, so here we are, True Crime Doula,
And
and
me. Whatever my brand name is, I don't
I
know yet.
know.
I'm not
How
very
do
good
you
at
introduce
branding.
yourself?
I'm not very good at sweaters either. Anyway,
Yeah, no, your
this
sweater's
one,
fine. Is it a sweater or a sweatshirt?
no, it's a sweater. I sleep in my sweaters and I wear my gross sweatshirts. Not that they're gross, they're clean, but like I wear my sweatshirts out in the world. I'm coming to this whole adulthood thing a little backwards, I guess. Um,
Okay.
but comfort is key, especially if you're, just sitting around typing on a computer all day, which is kind of what I do at the moment.
I hear you. All right, so we're going to talk today about the most recent documentary on Hulu about Ruby Franke. The title of the documentary is Devil in the House. Is that right?
Devil in the family.
In the family, sorry.
All of Ruby
And
Frankie.
Devil in the House, Devil with the blue dress. But no, actually not very funny. I don't want to make light of this because this is it's interesting how this case has some parallels to the Lori Vallow case, in which the children were not so lucky to have escaped, been found, and rescued. But there are parallels there, and I do want to get into that. But first, before we jump into it, you started to mention the production team, and I thought it was really interesting. I want to just say a couple of things first, then I want you to tell me what you know about them. But I thought it was really interesting that they were British and that they don't understand Mormonism. I could just pick that up on the certain things that were asked of Kevin, because he's sort of the primary. I mean, they interview Kevin and the two adult kids, Chad and Shari. But there's a couple of moments where he asks a question that I was like, that's so classic Mormon, and just this just sort of belief of, if there are angels, there are also devils. If you can commune with God, then the devil is right on your shoulder as well. This, you can almost hear the interviewer having a complete sort of like, he asks Kevin a couple times, and you believe that? The speaking in tongues, the Jodi having a trance, Kevin still to this day stating, weird things happened with Jodi. Things were flying around the room, or he shows a picture of that print on the glass that he claims is like the handprint of the devil. And the interviewer is like, you believe that? I mean, it looks like a smudge to me. Okay, so go ahead. What do you have to say about that?
It's interesting. I noticed that too, not the whole Mormon thing, which is fascinating, but that the producers were British because this is anecdotal. Just, I don't know if this is some bigger thing, but it seems like a lot of British production companies are getting heavily into true crime documentaries. I
Okay.
don't know if this is just because the entire world is, but I did a story that was in the true crime genre a number of years ago, and the production companies that would contact me about developing something were all
Mhm.
British, except maybe
Interesting.
one or two. And I mean, not that there were thousands beating down my door, but it was a pattern, and I was very surprised because it
Yeah.
just, I don't know why they would have gotten there first, really. So
What's the production company called again?
the one that did this documentary,
Yeah.
Passion Pictures, and it looks like they're doing a whole bunch of stuff. They've been around since 1987, and they do animations, they do commercials, they do docs, which is not uncommon because, there's not a ton of money in docs and so on compared to something like commercials. It's not as guaranteed, it's not as steady, it takes forever, whereas a commercial does not take nearly as long. So I don't know. It's just something I've noticed and I've sort of wondered, is it just because that's the thing these days and the Brits are, it just happens that they're getting out there faster, but I don't know. I mean, another British production company was behind, now that I think of it, was behind the recent documentary about the Grey's Anatomy writer who faked cancer for years. That's a British production company too.
Hmm.
So it's I don't know, but I found it interesting. I mean, maybe they're sort of fascinated by these very American or perceived to be American stories. I mean, there are British scammers for sure, but we're seeing a lot of this stuff in the States. And I think it must be fascinating. I mean, I grew up without really much religious education at all.
Right.
So a lot of this stuff is very confusing to me.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, the handprint smudge, I was expecting to see something really like out there. But when they show the photo, I'm not even sure which way it's oriented. It's like, did someone, I mean, when I was a
It's like
kid,
a smudge.
yeah, kids
Listen,
loved,
but if you were going to see the face of Jesus in a slice of toast or in the woodwork, in your kitchen, you're going to see it, which is an interesting.
the toast I can see. Sometimes you can see like the outline of it, but this was like,
I know, but we know that that's just the way the toast happened to burn. And
right.
so the Hidden True Crime, their podcast, um, Dr. Matthias, who's a forensic psychologist, referenced this. I don't know. I forget what his title is. He's a psychologist who studied at Yale or Harvard or taught there, and he made like sort of a whole point of believing is seeing, not the other
Mhm.
way around, which I thought was a really interesting way to describe these.
Confirmation bias, like anything else, any other confirmation bias. It just happens to be sort of specific. I mean, I saw that smudge, and the first thing I thought was a kid had jumped up and tried to see how high he could smash.
Right,
And
right,
my
right.
friends did that all the time. I was not particularly great at jumping, so I didn't try that. But like, I could have easily seen one of those kids bored out of their minds in, this humongous compound with nothing in it but like, there's a boat in the basement. Like when the cops do their like through walk
There's
of
a boat
yeah, there's a boat. One of the photos has a boat in it.
in whose house? Ruby's or
No, in Jodi's
Jodi's?
in that weird compound.
Oh, yeah. All
I
right.
mean,
Oh, so let's back it up here. I'm
okay,
going to give you some things that I want to discuss, and I'm
okay,
going to, then you kind of roll with it. I
sure.
want to talk about the trance that Jodi goes into and what we think of that and how much of that is real or not real. Obviously, we have our opinion on that. The chart that Kevin alludes to, and somehow they have footage of that chart, kind of like the camera sort of pans around. I slowed it down and I wrote down a lot of the attributes that Ruby put on that chart. That chart was it was like a spreadsheet basically to help her choose a partner. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Ruby's personality a little bit, this kind of like very driven type A perfectionist, and how that informed the way she parented, but also her sort of mother identity and even wifely identity. And then a little bit about Ruby's sister, Bonnie, who's still doing family vlogging. So there's that. Then this, I don't know if you heard this, this was on Law and Crime, but they showed the footage of Kevin and the adult kids testifying before lawmakers in Utah about how the dangers of family vlogging and that changes need to be made, not least of which the kind of, it's called a Coogan law. I'm sure you're familiar with that, right?
Say it again.
What?
Say it again. The what law?
Coogan, Coogan.
And
So,
I'm not
so child actor
child
Jackie
actor.
Coogan, right? So there was everything that Jackie Coogan made as a child was blown through. All his
Mhm.
money was blown through by the
Yeah,
parents, and that was pretty common in the day because
it was. Yep.
there was no policy about this. So now, if you're a child actor or actor commercials or whatever it is, your money has to go in an account where the parents can't touch it. That
Held
kind
in
of
trust.
thing,
Yeah.
right? It's like a
Or it's a
trust thing.
portion of it or something like that.
A
It's
portion of it, probably not all of it,
yeah.
because we know from what's her name. I'm glad my mom died.
Oh, McCurdy,
Jenna
Jeanette McCurdy.
McCurdy. Yeah. Jenna, is that her name?
Jeanette. I think it's
Jeanette,
Jeanette.
Jeanette. Yeah. Thank you. We know from her that like she was supporting the family. Anyway,
Yep.
so yeah, I want to talk a little bit about their testimony.
I want to talk about the cops and how they dealt with the minor child that they found in Jody's house.
Yeah, I know that really bugged you. And
It bugged me.
yeah, I know. I don't, well, go ahead. Wait. So, doing God's work, that's really like, that was sort of the crux of this whole like family vlogging, was not seen as this like corrupt sort of capitalistic endeavor. It was doing God's work. You get married, you go to church, you pray, you instill values and the sort of Mormon virtues to your children. And then to document all of that is
They
just spreading the word.
they love documentation, Mormons. I mean, they hold so much genealogical information.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I've seen that a lot
Yeah.
in some of the
Oh,
research that I've
it's
done.
intense. I think that they are responsible for family search. It's not
Oh,
ancestry, and I could be getting this wrong, but I believe it was early days when this was sort of there were less fees attached to some of it. I believe that family search and some of the Mormon data was available for free, but don't.
that makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on that. So, okay, so if you're starting with that, it's a little bit parallels the documentary, which does begin with the son. We're going to have to refer to them as R and E
Right.
because even though a lot of people know what their names
Yeah.
are, that's technically how they should be referred to, being that they're minors and so forth. So um, starts with are escaping from the house. Obviously, we don't see that, but showing up at a neighbor's door, etc. Everybody has seen that footage. We've also seen a lot of the body cam footage of the police going into the house. Look, before you even get to like the way they dealt with
Right.
the little girl, pulling Jodi out of the house and just smacking her down with like, yeah, that's great. When she's like, I'm on the phone with my lawyer. And they're like, yeah, that's great. And they pull her out of the
And they
house.
don't even know what's
So
going on.
satisfying.
Yeah.
Who doesn't know what's going
So
on?
I think the calls are this happens. The calls are sort of because they're now they're dealing with multiple police departments. So the first call comes from the neighbor.
Right,
So the first call is the neighbor, and that's where everybody goes. So
right.
that's, I think, when everyone's sort of dispatched out. So it's unknown what information people are being told. Whoever
Okay,
went to Ruby Frankie's house was, I think it was a different police department, and then the police department that went to
that makes
Pam's house,
sense.
another one,
Because it was
and
kind of a distance away. Yeah.
they never tell each other.
Oh,
So the cops showing up, they don't know what they're there for when they're going to check on the two minor children at Pam's house and when they go search the Frankie house where no one is. They're not sure. I think at least in one case, I think definitely the American Fork cops when they're sent over to Pam's, they're not sure what's happening. There's not a
okay.
lot of communication, and that's not uncommon during different
Okay.
jurisdictions.
Yeah, it
Like,
could be.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, but when they show up at Jodi's door, they know that R said, my little sister is in there. So they know they're going in for a child.
yeah,
And Jodi is so smug and adamant. She's like, I can tell you what's in the house.
she does not get it.
She's not getting it. And yeah, and they just launch right in and they don't care. And
No.
there's that issue of they don't need a warrant because of exigent
Exigencies.
circumstances,
Yeah, that's
which
a really big, clear case of excuse me, exigent circumstances.
it's hard to say.
I mean, for people who might not know the story of how this happened, is that one of the minor children, a boy, he's 12, he escapes from Jodi's incredibly large, imposing postmodern compound in the hills of wherever the hell it is in Utah. And he walks in his socks in the heat to the neighbor, which is about half a mile away. He actually stops at a house before, but no one's home. And an
Mhm.
elderly gentleman and an elderly woman end up calling the police and giving him some food and water. And the couple has not wanted to speak publicly about this, which I think is amazing and great because a lot of people in their place would just milk this for all it's worth. So hats off to you, anonymous couple, for doing the right thing and being quiet about it.
Ivans, that's where it is. Ivans,
Ivans, yeah.
Utah.
And this
Really
kid,
like dry desert,
yeah,
hot as blazes,
red
make kids
sands,
stand out in the sun. They got sunburn. What is it that they
I,
don't care about their kids getting sunburned and possibly skin cancer?
I don't know. God, I think will fix it. The rapture's coming. I don't know. But, this kid looks, at first glance, he just looks like a skinny 12-year-old, but then it becomes apparent that he's got, hog tie marks on him and that he has been restrained in such a way that if he tries to get released, he's
Right.
then rubbed the skin completely off and almost down to the tendon. And what I found particularly insane is that one of the things that Jodi would say about it is that he did it to himself.
I heard that. That was
And
in
what
the
she
tape phone
means,
call.
I
Yeah.
couldn't it took me a second to get it. I thought she meant, oh, he's brought the punishment on himself, but no, she's meaning, oh, we just tied him up. He started thrashing around because you tied him up, you tied his
He,
legs to his
he
arms.
wasn't right. He wasn't compliant to his shackles, basically.
Right.
So
So, oh,
he
his
created the injury.
it's insane. But it shows you like where her weird logic comes from because, you know, like if everything being equal, yes, you could argue that this child did cause these injuries, but what the logic fail is that you've hogtied a 12-year-old for the sin of existing. Like, okay, so so it shows her sort of willing obtuseness about it. Like, it's just so weird. It's just
Yeah,
so,
and in the phone calls, the recorded phone calls from prison, I did hear her say, "This is a witch hunt."
yes.
She feels victimized by all of this, and everybody's against her. And a couple of times she said, "I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong."
And I think that they both believed that. Like, I think this is so intricate and so documented. I feel like you're not going to put that kind of evidence together if you don't think you're doing the right thing. Like Ruby's crazy journals, where she talks about the demonic possession of her children, keeping in line with her religious beliefs. Like this, it all looks like she's completely bought it. I think there's definitely delusion going on in there. I don't think she was like, "Hey, I'm torturing a bunch of children for fun." I think she thought she was doing the right thing. I think she was sort of a disciplinarian in general. But I think she believed her own hype. Jodi,
Oh,
I
she
don't know.
100% believed her own hype. She's always the smartest person in the room. And the scary part is that she does have a sort of like she has a valid psychological approach.
Right, because she's
Sort of
using, yeah,
she's using it in a negative, misappropriating way, which sometimes they have like psychologists weigh in on that and say, no, 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 that's not what you do, and you
yeah,
don't.
that's not what that means.
That's
Yeah.
not you don't use it that way. But it's very easy for her to manipulate vulnerable people and to
And
be
it
the
sounds,
smartest person in the room. Just that little snippet where, like, she has that Zoom session with Chad, and she's like, "All right, are you ready to change your life? Are you on board with blah, 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 blah?" And he's like, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "You're lying. I can tell you're lying." And that is like, again, they see her intelligence, which is all still part of her manipulation, as something like to respect and to look at as like, my God, she's a genius. Everybody else would have been like, all right, great, Chad, let's get going. But you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
they were all sitting ducks for her manipulation.
And she knew she was right that Chad was lying, or the chances are that he was. And that's what helped sell it. I think that's
Yeah.
also sort of part of that religious thing of like, I am anointed because of whatever abilities that I have granted by who knows?
Honestly, doesn't all of this really come down to she is repressed and closeted in her innate sexuality that she cannot bring to the surface because it is absolutely against Mormon values to be homosexual. That is just her cross to bear. And somehow she found a way to manipulate that.
Hmm.
There is no doubt. I think Kevin has a hard time accepting that
Yeah.
there was a sexual relationship between the two. But
He was, I mean, well,
Shari comes out and says
yeah.
it.
Jodi was the anti-sex police. I mean, she's separate. I mean, for whatever her reasons are, that was her, that's how she appeared. So that could be part of it for Kevin. But I think, here's what I think. I think this started out as a bad parenting system in Jodi's head. Whenever it was that this whole thing started, connections, Jodi's classes, whatever. But I think it turned into the only way that she could express any kind of affection or attraction to another woman. I think it kind of happened in a weird kind of split, and that she kind of ended up taking the place of these husbands and
That,
realizing she could
that's
work to her
right.
advantage.
You're right.
But
She
yeah,
positioned herself as the substitute, the stand-in.
yep. And what made it work in some ways is, and I've experienced this before, like, and it's always been kind of interesting of like when you're in that world of shiny happy people, to reference the documentary, you it doesn't even occur to you that somebody is gay. They don't, it doesn't, like I could walk in and they'd be like, "So how's your husband?" And I'd be like, I mean, I'm non-binary, so it all goes out the window, but like, you know what I'm saying? And you'd be like, "Oh, I mean, granted, I very well could be straight. Who knows by based on looking at people, but like it doesn't even happen." So I think also what's telling in that is that Jodi says to their niece, to her niece, okay, I'm getting this all screwed up. Jodi says to her niece, Jessie, who is non-binary, that if she, Jodi, were to engage in some kind of relationship with another woman, it would be like sacred and blah, blah, blah. What that is what they've been taught about gay people doesn't actually match anything about pretty much anybody. So, she's been told whatever fire and brimstone gay people do all these horrible things, but no, she feels this love for these women, so it must be different
Oh, I see.
because
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't translate properly.
yeah. Right. It
And
doesn't translate. Yeah.
you're in
And
that
that,
bubble of Utah where,
I wish I could see how she manipulated Ruby into it becoming physical.
well,
Now,
here's another one.
but
So let's say that you're within the very religious framework of like, I'm wondering, does Ruby actually know what sex is? Like, she knows what it is, but does she know what it is? So she could have experienced something sexual with Jodi, and Jodi could spin it into a religious experience. Like somebody who doesn't know what it
oh,
feels like would feel
no.
like they've been given something divine.
Interesting. That
That's my
could
thinking.
be. And what's her name? Shari, when she had to go into the room at some point,
Mhm.
which was formerly her bedroom, or maybe they took back the master bedroom. I don't know. But she said it was like, it was weird. There were candles and it was like
It could be, it's a religious, I mean,
massage oils. There were like
Jo-
all these things that
right.
indicated something
Ruby,
that, yeah.
Jodi could have said very easily, I need to get to a trance state. You need to do these things. And maybe I need to do these things for you as well to get you into that trance state. So
Maybe.
maybe Ruby has not had this experience or not had this experience in this context.
I'm
And
sure
so
Ruby had no experience with other women.
right, but it doesn't matter. I mean, in terms of like, I don't know. I mean, maybe her experiences with Kevin were very, very different in such a way that this was able to be elevated as something divine. Because she says that word all the time, divine. She tells Chad when he comes back from that wilderness camp, she's quizzing him, why did you go to Anasazi? And he goes, because I was a bad boy.
Mm.
And she said, Ruby's explaining you're not a bad boy because you are divine. And that's that Mormon thing where everyone's a piece of God. What is it? It's someone, everybody's a piece of God. Everyone's born as part of God, I guess. I don't know.
I think that's right.
But I think that also is sort of ripe for exploitation. Like, Jodi could have said, I have, everyone's divine. I'm a little extra divine because I have these magic powers. I have a lion named Charles. I have these visions, whatever. Um, I think it's a whole package. I mean, I could see Jodi not understanding completely what's going on. I mean, she had a relationship with a man. Maybe that didn't go so well. It obviously didn't. I don't think the kids are in touch with her either. Maybe she thinks that this is a religious experience too, because, she's been given this view of gay people as, I don't know, maybe she thinks that they have horns like people sometimes think Jews have. Like, I've never experienced anyone thinking I had horns, but I'm sure there are people who do.
Oh,
But
yeah,
like,
could be.
and it's so the opposite of what she's expecting. So I don't know, really. I
That's
don't
an
know.
interesting twist on it. I hadn't thought about it that way, that like she elevated it to something else that became spiritual and
Mhm.
divine in a way that would make it acceptable or palatable to share to Ruby to kind of like to yeah to
Because
just kind of bring her
she's
in.
a captive audience, and now she's literally a captive audience,
She's captive
and
audience, yeah.
and and Jodi is selling her on all kinds of stuff that it's not, that to us who are not Mormons or particularly religious would be like, what? But it goes along with the rest of it. I mean, I think that she's able to explain away anything. She's the guru, she's the leader, she's the
They thought
grand
she was
leader.
a prophet.
Yeah.
They referred to that a couple of times.
Which
Okay.
goes to the trance. Should we go to the trance?
So the trance, I mean, they only show it for a couple of moments, but it just seems so fakey fake. Her eyes are closed and she's supposedly speaking in tongues. That's not speaking in tongues. She's speaking in perfect English. She's saying things that are like, I have her.
She's
She is
mine.
mine. And this is yet another manipulation.
Words drops.
Does the devil have Jodi? Does the devil have Ruby?
Does Ruby have Jodi?
Does
Jodi
Jodi have Ruby?
right.
Yeah, exactly. There's a
Or
bunch of ways to interpret
is
that.
she high as fuck on whatever they started hoarding from Mexico, which is allegedly uh antibiotics, but who knows?
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know,
Who
I
knows?
mean, I heard somewhere that people who believe in this type of like rapture will stockpile even illegal drugs to use ostensibly to trade once the end times come, you know?
Fair
And
enough.
are getting into using them too. I mean, that's another theory that was floated for Kevin of why he was seeing plates fly off the wall because they dosed him, which is entirely possible.
Right. That
We're
is
talking about
entirely possible.
we're
Yes.
talking about a population who seems to, and I don't know if this happens in like daily Mormon life, I have no idea, where these kinds of trances and experiences maybe aren't typical. They don't happen to everyone, but they're normalized, right?
They are normalized, yes. And
So,
I know that from the Lori Vallow
mhm,
Daybell, that case. Yes, that's normalized. And even we hear the word zombie used to
right.
describe somebody who's, I guess, in Jodi's words, would be in
Distorted.
distortion. Um, Lori didn't use and Chad didn't use those words, but it's essentially the same concept, you know?
Yeah, it's been translated differently by the two
Yeah.
prophets.
Tylee is being a
It was
teenager.
zombies.
She's a teenager. She's being defiant. She doesn't want to babysit her little brother. She's a zombie. You know,
Yeah, yeah. The whole idea is like that people are being controlled from an outside force, and that
right,
much.
right, right.
And when
And now
Jodi
it's
does it, it's all good because
oh,
she's a prophet.
right, right, right.
Can't do it, they're evil.
Wait, and then they do these castings where you have to like cast the demon. This is also like dark and medieval. It's
Yeah, like tent
amazing
revivals too.
that this exists today in modern times. And you know, listen, I gotta say, this is a really uncomfortable piece to all of this. Is that when we look from the outside and say, oh my God, they're all so crazy, they think the end of the world is coming. Well, it is all about your perspective because there was an earthquake in Utah. I mean, that was bound to happen. Is that like related to some biblical event? If that's your lens, then yeah, it is. And the pandemic, I mean, we can understand the pandemic and its ramifications and its like, global ramifications, but for them, the pandemic is God's wrath.
Right.
You see
God's
what I mean?
mad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
and scaring a little kid with that is pretty easy, honestly, especially if
oh
they've
yeah.
grown up in it. I mean, even if I didn't, if I were 10 or 12, some crazy adult is ranting crazy at me, I'm gonna freak out and maybe toe the line too. I mean, it's like they're bigger, there are more of them than you.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes. Oh my God, all of that. So that's just so intense. Um, I don't know if you just don't mind segueing. I just want to go through this because I find this very
mhm.
funny. The chart that was created for
Oh,
Ruby, because
when
Ruby had so many suitors that
I
she had
was back
to
in
make.
college, yeah.
Yeah, so she's back in college. She had so many suitors, and apparently this is not that uncommon that like
Yeah.
young Mormon women are sort of, to help you sort out your decision making about a partner, make
Yeah.
a chart
Pros
so
and cons, yeah.
pros and cons, which, okay, before I get into it, there's something so deeply inherently wrong with that in the sense that it is so formulaic and
Mm,
cold. It doesn't take into account attraction, chemistry, things that like maybe don't align with your exact values but end up being a good match for you. But they don't want to take any risks. So
no.
here are some of her attributes that Kevin
And
memorized.
I also wonder how Kevin knew. Was it like posted up somewhere?
No, no,
Did he
it,
go to
it
her room?
sounded like he was in her room. She was maybe out of the room for a little bit, and he saw it in her
Can
closet.
boys be in the girls' rooms in Mormon school?
I don't know, but he saw it in her closet. I don't know what the circumstances were, but he saw it. He took notes and tried to accommodate all of her things,
He
like
engineered it just like an engineer would.
engineered it. No R movies, sense of humor, handsome, would help a child with homework, smells good, comfortable to talk to, cheerful, doesn't swear, holds my hand, patient, takes me to temple. Christmas is their favorite holiday. And interestingly, prays daily, but in a separate item, not overly spiritual. Interesting thought about that. Is an Eagle Scout, wants 6 children. Oh my God, they got it exactly. But
Hmm.
here's the funniest one of all, is crazy about me. So that tells you everything about Ruby. She wanted this person to fit the bill, the descriptors, the superficial things, but the most important thing is that they prioritized her. It wasn't about her worshiping him, it was about him bowing to her, which is Kevin, who described himself as being insecure and not very confident.
Nerdy, he
He
said.
was
Nerdy.
nerdy, he was insecure, and he just would have done anything that Ruby said. And that's what leads him to the point where he doesn't take a stand. I mean, I can imagine many other parents going, wait a minute, you're going to ask me to leave the house and not see my children for a year?
I'm
I don't
taking you to
think
court. Yeah.
so. I'm taking you to court, right?
Yeah. Most people be on the phone to an attorney. But again, like that's why it's why part of it's so dangerous is it blends all these things. I mean, she Jodi positioned herself as a psychologist. And we've seen this in stuff like do you remember the Augustine Burroughs Running with Scissors?
Of course, one of my favorite books.
Hold on, someone would like to say hi.
Oh, is a little Judy.
Okay.
Hi, little
Um,
Judy. Ivy.
I mean, Augustine Burroughs was given to his shrink to live with, right? And like those people were batshit too. And it's like these are people who are given so much authority. This
Allegedly, RF, allegedly.
allegedly what?
That family was not happy with the way they were
Right, but
behaving.
they're insane. There've
Well,
been, I think there are other people who corroborated actually his experiences that these people were bonkers.
I mean, who knows? Augustine, like Truman Capote, is a storyteller, and if
Yeah.
it makes a good story,
Well,
it's you
let's say
can
it's for the,
extrapolate and sort of
yeah. I mean, the idea though that
hyperbolize. Is that the
these
word?
people are in positions of power, and they're also in positions of power because they are thought of as people who like know how to help these humongous issues. So you've got a religious community that has shades of that anyway, and it's like the perfect storm.
I
There was
want to
somebody
believe
who hacked this
Augustine, by
team.
the way.
What?
I want to believe Augustine. I
Yeah,
loved that book. That
I'm
is
pretty
a
sure it's legit. I feel like I
incredible
heard
coming of
somebody.
age story.
Yeah, I feel like someone corroborated it, like somebody else who knew that family, but I can't remember now.
Yeah, well,
Snorking at
right.
me. This is what she loves. She loves sitting with her little arm. Her little arm is over my arm, and this is she'll, yeah,
She's
that's all
so.
she wants. I try to cuddle her in other places. Nope, she just wants to cuddle in this chair.
All right, I don't want to go too long, so we're at 40 minutes.
Can I talk about the cops?
Please go ahead.
So, one of the things that I was not I would say disappointed by was how the police and the EMTs, I believe, handled little E when they found her. She was found sitting cross-legged in what looked like a walk-in closet in the dark
Okay.
and refused to speak. Now, without revealing too much, just because it's not exactly relevant, I've had experience as a small child dealing with cops in an emergency situation like that. Not like that, but in terms of cops have been called for something bad and there are children. Uh,
Okay.
and what I noticed right away is that they're putting a lot on this kid. I mean, this is like nuanced stuff. So they're asking her a lot of questions and they're standing over her, which
Mhm.
is not a good idea. And they're putting a lot on her by asking her a lot of questions. And in this situation, what this kid needs to know up top, which they do in some cases, they tell her, you're not in trouble, but she needs to know vaguely what's going on. So if the cop, moves aside a little bit, and this kid needs somebody on her side, she needs to know that. So if the cop had gotten down to her level, not to talk down to her, maybe sat down something casual, maybe not even looking at her and explaining what they're doing. Hey, I got to stay with you. I'm going to sit over here. You don't have to talk to me. I'm going to explain a couple things to you. We just want to make sure everybody in the house is safe.
Mhm.
You, your siblings, whoever else. Nobody is going to bother you. If anybody needs to speak with you, they'll talk to me first and then I'll see if you're ready. Like that kind of stuff. She needed an ally. But what they were trying to do was get information, which I understand. I mean, they're in an impossible situation. They're trying to locate minor children. They've just, you know, witnessed this minor child completely covered in bruises because he's been hogtied. So, but it's a lot to put on a kid. What this kid
He
needs,
wasn't hogtied.
no, that
That means front and back.
he was. Absolutely, he was. The little R was absolutely, yeah. They had his arms
I thought he was
shackled
shackled
together.
in front and his legs were
Oh,
shackled.
maybe, yeah. But is that not a hog tie too?
No, not technically. Hogtied is literally you're kind of bent like in
I
a
thought he
U.
was. Anyway, it was
But,
bad
but
regardless.
it doesn't really matter, but it's
Yeah,
just a visual that may
right.
not be accurate.
Yeah,
He did manage to get out,
yeah.
and
Who knows how?
Jodi and Ruby were off doing other things,
Right.
thinking like, well, they're all tied up or
Yeah,
locked
we'll
up,
be fine.
safe,
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know, I'm not sure if you know this, it was not the first time he escaped.
No, it was not. It was maybe the third, second or third. But the it took 4 hours to coax E out of the closet, which makes total sense. I mean, these are kids who've been told not to trust anybody, especially cops. They're all going to jail. But when you're entering into a situation with kids like that, what you first really have to do is establish yourself as this child's ally. You're not
Yeah.
going to let anything happen to this kid, and you have to really show it. You can't just say so. You know, I know there's a lot of bumping going around and lots of people talking. We're just looking to see if everybody's safe. We want to make sure everybody's okay and nobody needs medical attention. We're trying to find your siblings. You don't have to talk to me. I'm going to continue to talk to you just because I want to keep you updated, just so that you know, like, say what's going on. Because
Yeah.
really, when they're
Listen, I appreciate what you're saying, but it's a lot to ask of just ordinary cops. And it's
Sure.
also because they need a victim's advocate. That's who should have been brought to
Yeah.
the scene. But it all happened so fast that I don't think they had
Yeah.
time to do that.
But yeah.
For just as an example, Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, that circumstance
Right.
when they were found that day and she had bruises on her and so forth, she could have really used a victim's
Right.
advocate.
Yeah.
And the cops really bungled that one in the sense that they were sort of talking to her like she was the perpetrator because
Right.
he was like, oh, well, she attacked me and she came at me and I was just pushing her off. They should have been able to see right through that.
Or at least be like, hey, we need to, yeah. But they
She's the victim there. She is the one with the bruises, and it was a classic victim response to blame yourself.
so they need they but that argues even more that regular cops need to have some of this training because
Well, they do need to have the training.
I'll
Yes.
tell you from personal experience, you never forget that. To
Yeah.
this day, if I'm stopped by cops and they're standing over me, I'm 40 years old, I can't handle it.
Right.
I just kind of freeze up like that kid. I need everyone to be quiet. I need everyone, And so I think, I mean, it's not, this is really sort of basic stuff. And this is sort of what he was trying to do.
Right.
I mean, keeping up sort of a very calm I mean, really, it's like, this is what's happening. Nobody is going to bug you. They have to talk to me first, and then I'll make sure, really just set up this that I am your ally and I'm going to help you and really demonstrate it. So if someone comes by and wants to talk to the kid, you can't talk to her unless she says it's okay. Let me ask her.
Yeah.
It works so
I
well. I mean,
love that. I really love that. I feel like that
it's
would have
so
helped
easy.
so
It's
much, but
so easy.
it's not how it unfolded. And fortunately, there was, I mean, to wait 4 hours
Mhm.
shows some degree of
Yeah. They may have done that. They may have like abandoned the track that we saw and like done some of what I said, but we only get that little
it's true.
glimpse.
We only got a little
But it
snippet.
stuck with me. I was like,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, and I wonder if the full body cam footage has been released or did they release it redacted? I mean, the
I don't
body,
think the full has been released as far
yeah,
as their interactions with E. But what you're talking about, I have the same response with Gabby
yeah.
Petito. I
Mhm.
feel like if I were there as a cop, I would have said, "Listen, I know you're 22 years old, but can we put a call into your mom? Can we
Yeah, or
talk to
like
your mom?"
I'm
I,
gonna
I
check
would have
in.
done that. The mom in me would have suggested that she talk to her mom, and her mom would have said, get on the next plane home. I don't care about the car,
Yeah.
whatever.
At
Just
the
get
very
on the
least,
next
talk
plane.
to these two people separately. Say, hey, I get that this is annoying, but we're gonna call somebody else out here so that we can speak to you guys apart.
Woof,
But for Petito, then she's away from him and
they
she
did speak to her apart.
but did they do it in did they were they both in the same car though? Did they ever take them out of the car and talk to them individually?
He was outside of their car, and she was several yards away in a separate police car
So
where
she
they
was in the
couldn't see
car.
or hear each other.
Okay.
They didn't completely massacre it, and they said, we're going to require that you spend the night apart. Not require, but we're going to suggest that you spend the night apart.
How would they even check, I guess? I don't know.
They got her a hotel
Oh,
or
they
the
did.
other way
Okay.
around. Yeah.
So was that bad that but they didn't oh yeah. But
She
again, it's like one of
needed
those
a victim's advocate. She just didn't have it. And that's really important in that kind of scenario. But
yeah.
listen, from the cops' perspective, they were just kind of like, oh, whatever, this is a couple fighting. And they got a little handsy. That's kind of all they were thinking. But take that knowledge and the previous call from earlier that day, which they did know about, and then you can see this guy has been physical. He was spotted. We've got the 911 call slapping her. So, you put two and two together and you make a logical conclusion. That's got to be really hard to live with to know that a day later she was.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like I want to make clear like I'm not being like you guys suck. It's just like it's just one of those things where I know it.
Plenty of people have said so.
I
So,
mean, I do think cops suck, but like not, I don't want to necessarily because I mean, this is an insane situation to deal with, but I mean, yeah, yeah,
I mean, listen, every time I watch this kind of body cam footage, I'm very, very acutely aware of the fact that as in hindsight, we see it very differently. And
yeah,
that if we were in it in the moment, who knows what any of us would do. You have a similar thing with Lori Vallow when they show up at her house and they're like, "Where's JJ?" "Oh, he's with my friend." "Uh-huh. Okay. Well, can we call your friend?" "Oh, yeah, they're at the movies right now." Like she has an answer for everything, and they don't really press the issue. Instead, they come back the next day and she's gone.
yeah,
She's gone.
yeah,
So something they should have, but again, should have what? It's like, and to a certain degree, we see that level of kind of like sexism where like Lori, it's like, oh, she's, attractive and she doesn't sound like a crazy person. She doesn't appear to be on drugs or drunk or anything. And she's
right.
telling us that she's hiding her kids or she's kind of keeping them on the down low because those other people are bad.
Hmm.
They're not there to play judge and jury. They can't. That's not their job. Their job is to simply uphold the law. So they go there for a welfare check, and it wasn't fruitful. And then
Yeah,
the next day, they're gone. But it's okay. I mean, they still tracked them down. It
yeah.
did no amount of vigilance on the cops' part in that case would have brought back the children. They were already gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's only so much that can be done just sort of in general in some ways, but like when there's glaring errors, that's when it sort of stands out. But this one for me is just more like let's try to do less damage to children in terrible situations. And it's not like it
Three
doesn't,
children, right?
yeah. I mean, what people say is,
Maggie
oh,
was an
I don't,
adult.
what?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
It's
interrupt. Go
it's
ahead.
like, you know, people say, oh, I can't help because I'm not trained or whatever, whatever. And the thing is, like, I've heard that a lot, and I've actually seen the people with the training screw it up worse. It sucks. And this isn't just cops. Like, I've seen psychiatrists and psychologists do it. Um, and that the people who have no training at all are the ones that actually end up being the most help. They don't have, some of that garbage in there that just doesn't, and so it it changes you. I mean, that kid's life's never going to be the same. Cops are probably the least of her issues, but it sticks out. I mean, it really, you don't forget that kind of thing. When like the
Oh,
two huge cops are in your space, sort of trying to make concerned small talk with you. It's very jarring and
so, oh, shoot, we're having
weird. You
connection.
just, why are you in my space? What? Yeah.
Sorry, it froze for a minute. All right, well, I want to wrap it up in a second, but since you're talking about
Yeah.
E and her experience there, I would like to maybe end with, and anybody can look this up. I know Law and Crime posted it, but she doesn't speak in front of the lawmakers in Utah, but her father reads her words. She's 11 years old at
Yeah.
this point, and she said something really interesting, which was, of course, I didn't realize at the time how dangerous family vlogging was for us and how it is for other children. I grew up thinking I always had to perform. I had to be someone I didn't feel like I was. I was always in performance mode. And now I'm left with this feeling of like people don't like me if I'm not
Or
presenting
who am
myself.
I?
Yeah, like who am I? Right. It's like an identity crisis that she's experiencing at age 11. She said something like, I find myself having to like show off and get attention because that's the way I was raised. That's what I was
That's
raised
what she knows how to
to
do.
do. That's what I know. And so she talked about that as being a residual effect and a couple of other things about the sort of superficiality of it and like not really understanding how to move through the world, how to trust people, how to get friends, like just how to connect with people because everything was so performative. And so, I mean, in a sense, look, they didn't know. As a mother, you might want to intuitively know that you're doing some irreparable harm to your children, but that did not come across to Ruby at all. She felt like she was doing this amazing thing by presenting her perfect little family to the rest of the world until they turned on her. They put her under the microscope and said, "Your poor children, you're a horrible mom," which destroyed her because as a narcissist, the worst thing you can do is be shamed.
Yep. And then she took it to even more extreme. Yeah. And these were her children in her mind, like her possessions, so that of
Her
course they'd perform
possessions,
for her
right?
because they belonged to her,
Well, and that's something Kevin says a
just
few
like
times. Like obedience is love. That's how you show your love is to be obedient and respectful to your parents. But it's never a two-way street. There's no sort of empathy for the child's experience. Maybe your daughter doesn't want to have bra shopping for the first time as a subject on a video. Maybe she doesn't.
or
She doesn't
Chad who
care.
just didn't
Or
want to perform
Chad.
those yeah, because we see that unaired footage of
Yep.
Ruby trying to get him to do whatever and he's just not feeling happy and she won't let it go. And it's like just let your kid go do what he wants to do. He's like 12 and bored.
There's none of that because to do that would make Ruby relinquish control.
Hmm.
She has to be the one calling the shots as far as her child goes, or all of her children. So to allow them to have a day off or to be in a mood or to not want to perform when she's like, "Can you just act happy?" And
Yeah.
he's like, it's such a poignant moment where he's like, "I just don't think I can right now." It's very real. That's the first time you see him being really quite real, which I don't think was ever aired. I think a lot of that stuff that we saw in the documentary is uh, kind of found footage,
Yeah.
that didn't actually make it to the cut.
Oh yeah. It's probably on like
I like you're right. She's not going to show herself barking at her kids, and it's funny to hear her swear at them, but say, "Get off the flipping couch."
yeah, I know.
When I hear that, I can't help but think of Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes, but they were Mormons.
But they're Mormons. That was the first time I ever heard that. I was like,
I thought it was super funny, Napoleon Dynamite, and then someone explained it to me that like, no, yes, it's a funny movie, but they're literally not that's not a choice they've made to be funny not to swear. It's because they're Mormons. And I was like, what?
and they have to.
Yeah.
They
Oh
have
man.
to not swear and substitute those clean words for
But
bad
it made it
words.
so much funnier. Like not for Napoleon Dynamite rather. Like
Napoleon Dynamite,
it
right?
was so funny, but the humor was
Us,
yeah.
because we're like, what?
But it fit the world of the movie. It just upped the
We
quirk
did.
factor. So it worked out.
Like calling a quesadilla a quesadilla. All right. Okay. I think we should wrap it up. That was
Okay.
interesting. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
No, I think that's it. I don't know how to wrap these things up. I don't know how to TV.
There
Hi.
is no wrap up, really. It's just,
Sounds too weird.
this has been an open discussion. Our response and our kind of like a visceral sort of reaction to a pretty intense documentary where we saw some things that we didn't expect to see. It was quite the revelation to see a lot of these behind the scene things and also to get the viewpoint of the people involved, to hear Kevin speak for the first time since the arrest,
And
and
the
the
neighbors.
adult children to say like, you know what I want to end with? Like, ultimately, Shari saying, "My mother is dead to me," is really the biggest slap in Ruby's face. Chad is a little bit more open to having some kind of a relationship with his mother, and Kevin has divorced her, or is in, sorry, the process of divorcing, and will probably go on to having a very, very different and happy relationship with somebody. But for Shari, the oldest, to have rejected her mother completely is that's very intense.
The oldest girl too.
The oldest girl, yeah. Yeah.
That's
To
gotta be, yeah.
say, I, I can't abide by you. I don't accept your apologies. And every single thing that you put me through, I can't forgive.
Yep.
That's something.
Yeah.
That's something. I hope that Ruby and Jodi get to watch these programs at some point to see how they are perceived.
Yeah. Though because of like their narcissism, I don't know, maybe they shouldn't get to see anything about themselves. Maybe they should
Well,
just I don't know.
maybe. Maybe there's just no hope.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you once again for joining me.
All right. Till next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.